Death comes for us all, whether we embrace it or run away. I've always been quite scared of death. But you know, if he's a badass wolf guy, maybe not so much, okay? Look, I'm sorry about that tweet. I just love this dude so much. Grim Reapers and other wolves and lions are my aesthetic. Have you seen my favorite pieces of media? But yeah, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was not what I was expecting it to be, like, at all. I mean, it definitely caught my attention with its really pretty paint-like art style and Spider-Verse frame rate action. Also, its story premise about Puss being on his last life was interesting too. Okay, I guess I was expecting a pretty good amount from this movie going in. But what I'm getting at is that I was not prepared for just how much they were going to delve into the topic of mortality and what gives value to life. I hate it when a story premise that has so much potential gets ruined because of poor execution. It's not always that I get to have my cake and eat it too. So when Puss in Boots 2 came around with a really interesting premise and actually explored and expanded upon it in such a meaningful way, yeah, I was really surprised. Like, kinda blown away. After rewatching it again and having a lengthy discussion about it with some friends, I feel confident in calling this movie a masterpiece. I was never expecting to say that about Puss in Boots, but here we are. Before I go any further, I'm gonna put a spoiler warning because I will be delving into some of the more spoilery aspects of the movie. So with that out of the way, let's talk about how Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a film that instills the fear of death within you as a means to redefine just how valuable life and the connections you make within it are. Again, never thought I'd be saying something like this about fucking Puss in Boots. In the Shrek universe, the myth about cats having 9 lives is very literal here. If a cat dies, no matter how gruesome that death may be, it's implied that their bodies just perfectly reform, and a number is just taken off of their figurative Mario life counter. With the knowledge that you have 8 get out of death free cards, it makes sense why Puss in Boots over here laughs in the face of it. Which, wow, that phrase, "I laugh in the face of death," carries so many layered and cathartic meanings within the context of this movie. It's fucking insane how well thought out this story is, oh my god. Puss feels so detached from death because of the extra lives that he has, but in belittling the very concept, he's really just running away from ever having to confront his own mortality. It makes a ton of sense for someone to begin taking their life for granted if they perceive themselves as immortal. Well, Denji doesn't, despite his immortality, but Chainsaw Man is a very different case that I want to dive into one day. But yeah, if someone had a generally normal life growing up that wasn't filled with extreme depravity of basic human needs, then I think it makes sense for someone like Puss in Boots to take his immortality for granted. Hell, he makes light of death so much that when he reaches his final life, he doesn't even know it because he hadn't even bothered to stop and actually count how many times he had died. After all, Puss in Boots laughs in the face of death. The very idea that death could ever come to someone with so many chances so soon is ridiculous to him. With so much extra time given to a person, it ends up trivializing so much of their life. Think about it like this. Have you ever had that moment where you tell yourself that you want to work out and get into shape, but you put it off until later because you have confidence that you will have the time to do it later? We keep doing that until the deadline is about to hit, and we realize how much time we wasted on procrastination. Now imagine what falling into that habit would be like if you were in Puss's position. Puss mocks the idea of death coming for him. Therefore, he lacks the agency to make any substantial commitments because he believes that he has all the time in the world to make them eventually. We see how disastrous the consequences this way of thinking has for Puss within the movie. He couldn't go through with his marriage to Softpaws because of his fear of commitment, so instead he ran away, and he kept running from her. But what is Puss really running from? Where does his fear of commitment stem from? Well, think about it. If Puss were to finally settle down and commit to something as substantial as marriage, an act that is considered to be a milestone in what defines the course of a person's life, he would be acknowledging the existence of... Yes, I can finally talk about him. I fucking love this guy so much. Who is he exactly? Well, he's not metaphorical or allegorical. He is just death straight up. He is what Bleach should have been. Oh my god. I'm just getting this out there right now. Death is one of the best DreamWorks villains, up there with Fairy Godmother, Shen, and yes, even Pharaoh. My personal preference, of course. This guy is literally my aesthetic, like design choices and concepts wise. Grim Reapers with glowing eyes who look really creepy, who are also anthro-animals. God, why am I like this? If you guys couldn't tell, I'm obsessed with the concept of Grim Reapers and the emotional weight that comes with their jobs. The emotions that are invoked when a person comes face to face with death, and the emotional toll that it takes on the Reaper themselves. You can blame the ending of Persona Q1 for getting me interested in this concept. It's the basis for what inspired Shy Reaper, which I want to make happen one day when I'm in a better position in life. I've been writing stories ever since I was young, and I've gone through so many cycles of creating creepy looking Grim Reaper characters. The creepy factor to them adds to the overwhelming feeling that comes with confronting death. Death is something that we don't understand. It's an uncanny concept, so I always like adding uncanny features to their designs. They say that the eyes are a window to the soul, a gateway to familiarity. So that's why I like making their eyes hollow with a single glowing pupil. It's empty and dark, much like death. And the single glowing pupil represents the only thing we do know about death. It's that it comes for us all eventually. As for why I always make these characters anthropomorphic animals, yeah, I'll let you figure that one out on your own, yeah. So yeah, imagine how I felt when a character who is literally all of that shows up in this movie. Oh my god, I fucking love him. He is perfect. I'm sorry about completely derailing this analysis to gush about death. I just wanted to point out how this dude was literally made for me. Or maybe I was avoiding talking about Death's role in the movie to mirror how Puss refuses to acknowledge him, therefore causing him to run. Yeah, no, I just wanted to be cringe for a second and express my obsession with this fictional wolf. His use and portrayal in the movie is almost perfect to me, and yeah, every scene that he's in, like, those alone are better than the entirety of the bad guys. Yeah, I said it, I'm sorry. Anyway, this guy right here is the antithesis to Puss's lack of respect for the true value that life has. When Puss is told that he is on his last life, he still doesn't see an issue with how recklessly he had been living. Well, that was until he literally comes face to face with death. Now, we're not told until the third act of the movie that he is the Grim Reaper, but from his introduction scene, I could easily tell. In fact, I was actually hoping that they wouldn't reveal his true identity as Death at all, you know, to add more ambiguity to what his placement in the movie actually meant, but it's whatever. When he confronts Puss, he is absolutely frozen with fear. This is the first time in the movie that we've seen him feel any kind of fear. And this contrasts with how valiant and carefree he was at the beginning of the film, which makes this all the more jarring. Puss is unable to fight back, loses his sword, and runs away. Puss has never felt the threat of death before, and it terrifies him. He closes himself off from the world and tries to live a static life, free from risk, free from death. Puss eventually gets motivated to go back on a journey, but as he goes throughout it, death follows him everywhere. Every time Puss becomes aware of death's presence, he freezes, unable to muster a single word. The concept is just too overwhelming for him, and he can't function when his mortality is put into question. Having a direct experience with the idea of your own death, whether that be through a near-death experience or a worrying medical diagnosis, is terrifying. The extreme fear of the unknowns that come with it are unbelievably overwhelming. Moments like those, you really do get harshly reminded that you are in fact immortal and will die one day. We try to come to terms with that idea, but when the time actually does come, it can be terrifying. That's why each frame that death is portrayed in is shot in such an abstract way that makes him look legitimately creepy. Puss is being reminded of his direct experience with staring into the endless abyss that is the concept of death after all. These scenes where Puss encounters death are heightened by his character design and overall portrayal. Sure, Death could have had a more grounded design, but I feel like that would have taken away from the impact his scenes had. Death wasn't creepy in this movie just because the plot told us that we had to be scared of him. He was legitimately creepy and unnerving, and that sense of uneasiness that he instilled heightens our understanding with why Puss feels so terrified. No joke, there were times in this movie where Death caused kids to cry in my theater. Those glowing red eyes were silhouetted so well, and the composition of all of his scenes were just so well done. This dude encapsulates why I love Shin Megami Tensei 4 as a softcore horror game, because many of the best scenes in that game use the same tactics that death scenes do, but like 10 times crazier. But yeah, this movie does an excellent job at capturing the overwhelming feeling of confronting the realization of your own mortality. How the anxiety can petrify your very being, reducing you to a completely helpless state. But why does the movie try so hard to instill this fear within you? Well, memento mori, the idea that you will one day die, is what gives life so much meaning. Being down to his last life, Puss has no choice but to finally learn how to take the value of life seriously. Or, as some might say, the weight of life. Puss's first reaction to encountering death was to give up on everything and live a mundane and boring life with no risk. But even that isn't truly valuing what it truly means to live. It's actually just another representation of how the fear of death paralyzes someone and keeps them from living their life to the fullest. As Puss goes on his journey to find the wishing star, he learns how to truly commit himself to people. The idea that he isn't immortal causes him to value the people in his life because he realizes that he won't be around them forever. He needs to embrace the time he has with them now, and by doing so, he could find true happiness in life. This lesson is fully displayed in Puss's final confrontation with death. Puss is left with nowhere to run, but what he is offered is a chance to die valiantly. Death keeps telling Puss to pick up his sword. Puss's sword, up until this very moment, has been a representation of his arrogance about laughing in the face of death. Puss's decision to fight back against death and get rid of his wish for 9 more lives was such a fitting finale for a story like this. Death tells Puss that he will always be after him, but Puss tells him that he will always be there to fight back. Well, yes, in this case, Puss is literally fighting back against death himself, but this all represents something. The price Puss has to pay for learning how to commit himself to people and embrace the value of life was acknowledging that he is, in fact, mortal. Every time he remembers this, he will have to fight against the anxiety that comes with that realization. Although after this journey, he's finally ready to do that. He's done running away. He's done taking life for granted. He no longer laughs in the face of death. Death is what gives life its meaning, so belittling it implies putting down life too. As I said at the beginning, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish's message really surprised me. This movie legitimately has something strong to say about the value of life and takes a bold and mature approach by saying that we need to acknowledge death and our own mortality in order to give meaning to our lives. Death is scary, but the idea that everything is temporary gives us the motivation to truly live and achieve our goals in the allotted time that we're given. The people we love won't be here forever, but knowing that is what gives us the motivation to build connections with each other and embrace the time we have together in the now. Spending your life running away from your eventual death doesn't give you the chance to just stop and enjoy the now. Whatever you're going through may be hard, but spending all your time worrying won't leave room for any of the joys in life. This video is almost done, so right after this finishes, I want you to stop what you're doing and just take a moment to appreciate the good in your life right now. So yeah, I never thought that fucking Puss in Boots would lead me to making a video like this, but I'm really glad that it did. This movie is legitimately a masterpiece, and if you haven't done so yet, bro, you gotta see this movie. And with that, bro, I love this wolf so fucking much. He's so awesome. He's so fun. Oh my.
Hey, you want to see something cool?
I just want to say thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe. I'm so close to 40K. And also follow my Twitter. Huge shout out to my patrons. Your support means so much to me. So what's next? Well, I have multiple ideas about what to cover next, but what you guys will be seeing soon is a couple of YouTube shorts on Beastars and maybe a full-length video on Beastars sometime soon. Who knows? Or something else. I gotta figure that out, what video's coming next, but definitely something's coming soon. Happy New Year. Thank you for all the great memories in 2022.